Hey guys, it's Sherry Vegas here, and today I'm going to give you my guide to fluid acrylic painting for beginners. I've just got up a list of the items that you're going to need to create your flow art. So I like to use the global range of paints, which are the high flow acrylic paints. The reason why I go for the global paints is because they're quite a good quality at a decent price range, and I also use the pouring medium by them as well because I know that's going to go well with their acrylic paints. And I'm using the Art Spectrum Gesso. This gesso was recommended to me and it's quite reasonable price for the quality it is. The first step you want to do is just make sure you check the level of your table before you start applying any paints. I've already done that, so if you don't have a leveler, you can always use a leveling app on your phone. Once your surface is level, you can start applying the gesso all over the board that you are going to be using. This is an important step to ready your board for painting. Think of it as a primer, making the surface slightly textured, giving it a little bit of tooth, ready to accept any flow paints you apply on top. The reason why I'm using a board is that the board you can get perfectly level. Stretch canvas has a drum that you stretch your canvas over the top, and that can cause it to sag in the middle when you're applying a lot of paint, which you do with a fluid painting. I'm just applying my gesso with my palette knife, and I'm just scraping that all around the surface, and then any excess I have I scrape back into my gesso container so that way I don't have any loss. You can also apply, if you choose to, with a paintbrush. It's just up to you. I like to use the knife because that way I can scrape it all across, and then all the excess I just put back into the container. Once the gesso has fully set on your board, you can then start your flow painting. I've chosen a few different colours that I'm going to use for my artwork today, and now I'm just placing those in small plastic cups. When choosing your colours, you should know the difference between a craft paint and an artist paint. So a craft paint will contain more fillers and an artist paint will contain more pigments. So you're going to need to use a lot more craft paint to get that pigment that you require. A lot of people will tell you to use craft paints when you first start out just because they're so cheap, but I feel like you're going to have to work that little bit harder to get the quality you want out of a craft paint. You also need to think about when choosing your colours whether they are transparent colours or whether they are opaque. This is something I can go into more detail about in a more advanced tutorial, but I like to use a good mix of opaque colours and transparents as I find that works best for this kind of painting. In all of my colours, I've added the mixing medium. You can make your own mixing mediums. I'm just choosing to use the one that's made for this brand. And if you want, I can do a tutorial on how to make your own mixing mediums as well. So if that's something you're interested in, just pop it in the comment box below. Just want to give it a good mix, but not too well, because as you can see, I'm a bit too used to mixing thicker resin, and when I went to mix the fluid paints, I forgot how thin they are and that they kind of splattered everywhere. So you don't need to go that hard when you mix with these colours. With my mixing medium, I like to use a 20 to 30% ratio depending on my paint. You also can check your manufacturer's guidelines to see what ratio they recommend as well. When I mix my medium in, I'm looking for a certain viscosity with my paint. I don't want it to be too thick or too thin. I want it to be able to flow across the board but without separating too much. This is just something that you'll get over time. You now have the option whether you want to add in silicone. Silicone will create cells within the acrylic paint, but you do have to be careful because if you use too much of it, it can actually stop the paint from curing properly, or can make it crack or sort of not sit right. So this is your option whether you choose to add it or not. For this I haven't, and you can add it to all the colours, or you can just choose one or two to add it to. So now I'm just pouring my different colours into one large clean cup. This is called a dirty pour. I like to do this in resin, and it's also a really great technique to do in your flow acrylic paintings. With your dirty pour, you have two options, whether you choose to just tip the cup over the canvas or whether you choose to do a flip cup like I have, where I've placed the canvas on top and then flipped the cup over. If you're doing a flip cup, all you need to do is just lift the cup off your board and you'll get an amazing pattern. As you can see, the paint instantly starts to move and flow across your board, and that's where it gets the name from. So you can always swipe the paint across if you want to help create a new pattern. You can tilt the board around, and you can also use a blowtorch if you want to pop up the cells. Just be really careful when you are using a blowtorch over the acrylic paints, because some paints are really flammable, especially if you've put silicone oil in it, so don't keep the heat in anywhere for too long. If you want more of one colour, you can always go back in with that colour and add more of a pattern to your artwork. The paint will continuously flow until it sets, so if you like how it looks when it's wet, it's probably not going to look like that when it's dry. This is the end of part 1 on my guide on how to do flow acrylic painting. I've got part 2 coming, where I will show you how to seal your artworks, what colours to pick, and why you need mixing mediums. So if you like this, make sure you give it a big thumbs up, and if you want to see part 2, hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.